Hello everyone, and welcome to the Plant Reproduction series. In this video, we'll be working through a question from the Eastern Cape 2024 Provincial exam. This question is worth 10 marks. Question 2.2 gives us a diagram showing the structure of a flower. So let's go through the given labels. Label 1 is pointing to the top of the female reproductive organ, and that is the stigma. Label 2 is pointing to the narrower part, and that is the style. And label 3 is pointing to the ovary. I'd like you to pause the video and answer the questions. 2.2.1. Identify the parts labeled 1 and 3. Label 1 is pointing to the stigma. Label 3 is pointing to the ovary. In this case, we can't actually see the ovules inside the ovary, so saying that it's pointing to the ovary would be a safer bet. However, both answers are accepted on the memo. 2.2 asks you to give a function of the part labeled 2. So the part labeled 2 is the style, and the style is the passage for the pollen tube that connects the stigma to the ovary. You can also say that it is the passage that transfers the pollen to the ovary. So remember, when the pollen lands on the stigma, it extends its pollen tube down the style so that it can reach the ovary and fertilize the eggs inside of it. The way I like to explain it to my class is that when the pollen lands, it goes down in style, or it arrives in style. And the style is the part that the pollen tube moves down. 2.2.3. Explain how the part labeled 1 is structurally suited for insect pollination. Now, this is one of my favorite questions because this question is two-fold. We have the word structurally and we have the word insect pollination. So it's usually phrased as, how does the structure of this thing allow it to carry out its function? So to answer this question, we need to refer to the structure and then explain how that particular structure allows it to carry out a function. So label 1 is pointing to the stigma. So what structural traits of the stigma allow it to carry out its function? We have to first think about the function of the stigma. The stigma functions as sort of the landing platform. This is where the pollen is going to land. So if we think about it logically, if we want to have as much pollen as possible, what kind of traits should the stigma have? So first of all, the stigma is usually small and sticky. Because the stigma is sticky, this means that the pollen grains can easily attach from the insect body. The stigma is also situated deep inside the flower. So this means that the insects have to, this forces the insect to actually touch the stigma when they are trying to get the nectar. So those are the main structural traits of the stigma. It is small and sticky, so that pollen grains attach, and it is situated deep inside the flower. So remember, for this question, you refer to a structural trait and then explain how that trait allows it to carry out its function. I'd like you to, we have one more question. Right, 2.2.4 asks you to tabulate two differences between wind and insect pollinated flowers. Now, I'm not going to go through all these differences. However, remember, when you are drawing a table, remember to write a heading. When you are drawing a table, there are certain things that you must have. So to get 1 mark, there are 3 things you need to do. You need to, number 1, draw a table. Number 2, your table must have a heading. That heading must include both characteristics that you are comparing. And number 3, each column must have its own heading. So, in this question, our heading is table showing the differences between wind and insect pollinated plants. The heading for each column is wind pollinated plant and insect pollinated plant, and we've drawn our table. Now, you can pause the video here and read through the differences and then mark what you've written. Remember that the differences that you write must match. So if you write wind-pollinated flowers are small, on the other side you have to say that insect-pollinated plants are large. So finally, give yourself a mark out of 10, and then we can move on to the next question. Thank you.